That captivated the nation and the world. A British backpacker goes missing after driving along a remote stretch of the Stewart Highway in 2001. Now, exactly 10 years on, Peter Falconio's body has still never been found. And while the killer is in jail, those who convicted him have told 9 News the case may never be completely solved.
20 years, the mother of murdered British backpacker Peter Falconio has broken her long silence.
On what would have been her son's 50th birthday week, she's pleading for his body to be found, urging anyone with information and a conscience to come forward.
A killer, a crime scene, but 2 decades on, still no body. The chances of finding the remains of murdered British backpacker Peter Falconio in the outback, remote. But it's hoped a new plea from the victim's parents will bring answers. His 75-year-old mother has broken her long silence, saying, "We want to bring Peter home where he belongs, near his family. Peter has a beautiful niece and 2 lovely nephews who he never got to see or know. Our pain is always with us. I am appealing to anyone with a conscience to help." This week would have been Mr. Falconio's 50th birthday.
There will always be doubt about what really happened on that night until the body of Peter Falconio is found.
In the vast expanse of the Australian outback, on July 14, 2001, Peter Falconio and his girlfriend, Joanne Lees, embarked on a journey of adventure. Little did they know, this journey would soon turn into a nightmare. Peter and Joanne decided to take trips to various countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Australia. They arrived in Australia in January 2001. On January 25th, they started their road trip in Australia with the intent of visiting 5 cities. They were traveling in a Volkswagen camper van. This is also known in other areas as the transporter, microbus, camper, and informally simply as the bus or the hippie van. It was very popular with hippies in the 1960s and 70s. As they traveled along the desolate Stewart Highway, their vehicle was flagged down by a passing motorist, later identified as Bradley John Murdoch. What followed would send shockwaves across Australia and beyond. Let's start our case from the start. Well, one night this British couple, Peter and Joanne, were road tripping through the Northern Territory right smack in the middle of the outback. They were heading up the Stewart Highway on their way to Darwin. But around 7:30 p.m. a set of blinding headlights creeps up behind their camper. Annoying, but they keep driving. But the mystery vehicle floors it and whips around to drive parallel with Pete and Joanne. The van skids to a halt on the side of the highway. This man jumped out of his car and came closer to the van, saying, "There is a problem with the van. The exhaust pipe of the van is sparking all crazy." Joanne was in great fear. She was feeling that something bad was going to happen. Joanne can't take her eyes off this guy. His clothes are all disheveled, hair's a mess. And he won't stop pacing around the van. Something is real off about him. The next thing Joanne knows, bang, gunshot echoes through the silent desert night. And her boyfriend Pete hit the ground hard. Joanne was shocked when she heard the gun sound. Before she can turn around to see what had actually happened, this man jumps off toward his door with a silver pistol in hand. The terrified Joanne freezes as the man flings open her door, pointing the gun right at her head. He screams at her to duck down and put her hands behind her back. Joanne complies, her mind racing. Joanne's hands behind her back with restraints made from black cable ties and tape. He then tried to bind her ankles, but she resisted. Eventually, the man gave up trying to tie her ankles and punched her in the side of the head. He then dragged her to the back of his pickup truck and disappeared from view. She heard dragging sounds as if Peter's body was being moved, although she never actually saw his body. Joanne can hear the man shuffling around outside, grunting with effort. She cries out, "What do you want from me? Have you killed Pete?" After driving for 15 agonizing minutes, the Ute takes a sudden sharp turn and pulls over again. Joanne hears the driver's side door slam shut as the man storms off. She doesn't hesitate, this is her only chance. She wiggles her bound hands free and leaps blindly from the back of the speeding truck. Joanne hits the ground hard, then she tumbles into the prickly bushes. She crawls deeper into the scrub. Finding a dense patch, she buries herself in the leaves and waits. The man searched for her using his dog and a flashlight. He passed very close to her on 3 occasions, but he did not spot her. This search went on for several hours until the man finally gave up and drove the Volkswagen off of the road before returning, climbing in his Land Cruiser and driving away. After what felt like hours, Joanne finally reached the side of the road. A massive 18-wheel freight truck roared past, sending dust swirling. As it zoomed into the distance, Joanne leapt up, waving her arms wildly. This was her chance. If the truckers saw her, they could get help. The driver Vince and his partner Rodney stare open-mouthed at the horrifying sight, a petrified young woman stumbling alone in the darkness, tangled in restraints. Meanwhile, Joanne shared her story to these men. These men know stopping in the outback night is risky, but they can't leave Joanne stranded. They let her rest in their warm, safe truck while they drive the 30 miles to the nearest town. The police were notified at about 1:30 a.m. They arrived at about 4:20 a.m. and started searching for Peter and the killer at the crime scene. They found a pool of blood and Joanne's footprints, but no body. Then CCTV footage surfaces of an ominous man conveniently resembling Joanne's description, baseball cap and flannel shirt, filling a jerrycan that night at a petrol stop hours before the attack. As the saga continues, Bradley Murdoch's DNA inexplicably appears on the steering wheel and gear shift of Pete and Joanne's abandoned camper van. So he had to have been inside at some point. A teeny DNA trace also shows up on the back of Joanne's shirt from that night. Pretty hard evidence to refute. After a grueling 9-week spectacle, a verdict is finally reached. Guilty on all charges, Bradley Murdoch is sentenced to 28 years behind bars without parole for the murder of Peter Falconio. Mystery solved, it would seem.
A Darwin jury found Bradley John Murdoch is the outback killer, declaring him guilty of the British tourist's murder.
Thus began one of the largest manhunts in Australian history. Authorities scoured the outback, but despite their efforts, Peter's body was never recovered. The case took many twists and turns, with sightings of Peter reported across the country. However, none of these leads panned out, leaving the fate of Peter Falconio shrouded in mystery. Thank you for joining me on this unsettling journey into the heart of the Peter Falconio case. If you found this exploration intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more true crime content.